The young and the restless spoilers. Diane's fury burned hotter than any steel trap as she paced the polished marble floor of her study, the soft glow of the desk lamp casting long, wavering shadows along the walls lined with portraits of her family through the decades. Each footfall sounded like a drumbeat echoing the thunder of her heart, resonating with every memory of her son. His laughter as a boy chasing fireflies in the garden, the pride in his eyes on graduation day, the gentle strength with which he sheltered his younger siblings when storms raged outside. And now, that same son lay caught in a web of deceit, a pawn in Audra's meticulously laid trap. Diane could hardly bring herself to believe it, her boy, so bright and trusting, seduced by Audra's whispered promises and lured into decisions that threatened not only his reputation but his very future. The realization had struck her like a physical blow, leaving her breathless, her pulse hammering in her ears as fury and helplessness wrestled within her chest. She had vowed then and there that Audra would pay for what she had done, by any means necessary. Audra's betrayal was more personal than mere manipulation. It had been calculated, cold, and purposeful. From the moment Diane learned that her son had been misled into signing away rights, sharing confidential company information, and publicly humiliating himself in the press, she understood the danger her family, and her son's career, faced. Words like trap felt too soft, too polite, to capture the cruelty of it. Diane envisioned Audra's predatory smile as she coaxed her son towards self-destruction, imagined the soft lilt of her voice drowning out his better judgment. She had spent the past 24 hours gathering evidence, replaying phone logs, rereading emails sent under duress, and piecing together the pattern of Audra's deceit. Each new discovery set her blood boiling anew. Now Diane stood at the threshold of confrontation. She had arranged to meet Audra in one of the private lounges at the country club, a neutral ground, or so Audra might think. Diane's tailored suit and carefully arranged hair concealed the storm roiling beneath her composed exterior. She spared one last glance at herself in the mirror, eyes fierce, lips pressed into a thin line, hands steady. Then she stepped into the lounge, every stride measured, deliberate. Audra was already there, sitting on a plush velvet chair by the fireplace, her posture tense, fingers twisting in her lap. Her pallor spoke of sleepless nights and a fear Diane took perverse satisfaction in knowing she had inflicted. Audra's eyes flickered up to meet Diane's with a blend of defiance and pleading, as though uncertain which expression would serve her best. "Stay away from my son," Diane said, her voice low, controlled, as she approached the small coffee table between them. Her words carried the weight of iron, each syllable sharp enough to cut glass. Audra's breath caught, and she opened her mouth to speak, only to falter. Diane leaned closer, the lamplight reflecting coldly off the diamond at her throat. "If you so much as step within 100 yards of him again," she continued, "I will reveal everything. Every sordid detail of your bargain, the backroom deals, the hush money, the promises you forced him to make when he thought he was protecting your reputation. I will see to it that the world knows what you really are." Audra's eyes glistened with tears, but her voice cracked with defiance. "Please, Diane, you can't do that. You'll destroy me, my career, my family, everything I've worked for. Victor will, he'll have my head on a platter if he finds out I broke our agreement. I can't let that happen." Her confession hung in the air like a live wire sparking between them. Diane's shoulders tightened. She allowed herself a single, cutting question, "And what of my son's life? His prospects? His own reputation? Is that less important simply because I'm not the one with leverage?" She paused, letting her words sink in. Audra looked away, her calm facade crumbling under the weight of Diane's accusation. Diane pressed on, "You targeted him because you thought he was vulnerable. You thought he would keep your secrets in exchange for favors, for whispers of advancement. You thought he was weak enough to be your puppet. You were wrong." Tears spilled down Audra's cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice thick with remorse. "I never meant to hurt him. It was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, just until Victor approved my merger, just until I secured my position. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think I'd lose control. Control? Diane echoed softly, stepping back so that her full height towered over Audra. Her tone softened only slightly, allowing the barest hint of compassion to shimmer beneath the rage. Control is what you never had. You never had control over your moral compass, over your conscience, or you wouldn't be sitting here at my mercy. Audra collapsed against the back of the chair, her sobs racking her slender frame. Please, she sobbed, please don't do this to me. I've worked so hard, sacrificed so much. Don't destroy me now. Her back trembled, the luxurious setting of the lounge seemed to shrink around her, the walls closing in as her guilt and fear combined into a choking force. Diane made no move to comfort her. Instead, she reached into her purse and extracted a slim envelope bulging with documents, copies of messages, photographs of clandestine meetings, transcripts of phone calls, irrefutable proof of Audra's machinations. She laid them carefully on the coffee table. Study these, Diane said quietly. Every path you take from here will be dictated by my discretion. You can tear these up and claim they're nothing, but be assured, copies exist elsewhere. I have friends in the right places, friends who would love to see your downfall. My son's future is worth any price. For a moment, Audra was too overwhelmed to speak. The legal papers, the evidence of her own betrayal, sat like burning coals in her hands. She reached to pick them up, only to flinch under the weight of Diane's stare. What do you want from me? She finally managed, voice hoarse. Diane allowed herself a small, chilling smile. I want two things. First, I want you out of my son's life. Permanently. No contact, no messages, no appearances at company events, nothing. Second, I want your full cooperation if anyone dares to ask questions. You will testify, you will set the record straight, and you will help us clean this mess up quietly. In exchange, I may decide to keep your secrets hidden. Do you understand? Audra swallowed, nodding vigorously. Yes. Yes, Diane, anything. I promise. I'll resign, I'll disappear, just please, don't ruin me. Diane watched Audra's face, memorizing every line of fear etched into it. She knew that once Audra complied, her threat would hold power only as long as Diane kept her word. Good, Diane said at last, her voice softening with a fraction of warmth. You have 24 hours to formalize your resignation, to ensure there is no public scandal, for both our sakes. After that, any slip, any attempt to renege, and I will let Victor know exactly who you are and what you've done. He is not known for mercy. Audra nodded again, her tears subsiding into quiet sobs. Thank you, she whispered, though Diane knew it was the fear of retribution that drove her gratitude more than anything else. Diane stood, gathering the envelopes. Remember, she said, turning on her heel and walking toward the door, this is your one and only chance. Outside, the corridor stretched silent and empty, the echoes of Diane's heels the only testimony to her passage. She paused, looked back into the lounge where Audra sat, and in that frozen moment, acknowledged the fragile pact they'd formed, one born of blackmail and fear, binding them together in a secret as perilous as any poison. Then Diane walked away into the night, her resolve as unshakable as the love that had driven her to protect her son at any cost. Over the past 3 months, the name Aristotle Dumas has shadowed nearly every boardroom, whispered in corridors, and dominated every whispered rumor mill in Genoa City's business community. In the first month of this period alone, corporate insiders estimate that the moniker was spoken aloud at least 12 times during high-stakes strategy sessions. Every meeting of Newman Enterprises senior leadership, every whispered sidebar between executives at Chancellor Winter's gatherings, even in hushed tones at the Abbott family luncheon. By the second month, as suspicion deepened, the tally climbed to 19 mentions. 8 came during impromptu investor calls at Jabot Cosmetics, 4 originated in private emails forwarded among Victor Newman's inner circle, and an astonishing 7 sprang up in press briefings leaked to Crimson Magazine's gossip column. In the current month, with Amanda Winters publicly alluding to Dumas's hidden hand. The name has already been uttered 7 times in just 3 weeks. 3 times in televised interviews with Victoria Newman, twice in off-the-record conversations with Billy Abbott, and twice more in clandestine whispers among Devon Hamilton's circle of confidants. Altogether, that makes 38 documented occurrences, and analysts warn that this figure likely underrepresents the true volume of conjecture coursing through Genoa City's power brokers. Yet for all this repetition, the man behind the name remains an enigma, a phantom puppeteer who has upended alliances and threatened legacies without ever leaving a digital footprint. He is, as we know, Victor Newman's most formidable rival, but his fixation on Billy Abbott and his deference toward Neil Winters hint at a calculus far more personal than simple corporate warfare. Every time the name is spoken, it carries a charge. A reminder that someone out there respects Neil enough to leave Winters untouched, that someone sees in Billy the means to strike at Victor's heart. Amanda's recent emergence from the shadows offers our best clue yet, but her cryptic references only deepen the mystery. She speaks of having met Mr. Dumas, of feeling his gaze upon her decisions, yet refuses to disclose when or how she first became entangled. As the count of mentions reaches epic proportions? Nearly once every 2 days over the last quarter, the urgency to unmask Aristotle Dumas has never been greater. Genoa City's titans must now decide whether to mount a forensic hunt through financial records, subpoena every email server in town, or trust in insider intelligence to flush him out. Until they do, the name will continue to be spoken in fearful reverence, a dark refrain echoing through every corner of this cutthroat metropolis. Diane's vigilance had never been sharper than in the days leading up to the week of May 19th to 23rd, for she had learned through whispered boardroom rumors and intercepted communications that Victor Newman, ever the strategist, had secretly engaged Audra to serve as a pawn in a broader scheme against her son Kyle. The very notion set Diane's nerves alight. She knew all too well how Victor thrived on psychological warfare, how he would exploit any perceived weakness to gain the upper hand. The specter of Audra, a woman whose charm masked a calculating intellect, loomed large in Diane's worst imaginings. If Victor intended to use Audra to undermine Kyle's position, to plant seeds of doubt in his mind or lure him into decisions that would compromise his standing at Newman Enterprises or within their shared social circles, Diane would be ready to counterattack. She spent countless late-night hours reviewing every scrap of intel she could gather. Attendances at Vibronte product unveilings, snippets of overheard conversations suggesting that Audra might hold a secret prototype, a miracle product poised to challenge Vibronte's competitors, potentially cutting into Kyle's own initiatives. Each piece of evidence only stoked Diane's determination to shield her son from exploitation, for she understood that once Audra's involvement became public, Kyle's ambitions and reputation would be at risk of being overshadowed by scandal rather than innovation. Kyle's own anxiety mirrored his mother's fears. He found himself pacing the corridors of Chancellor Winters, torn between loyalty to family and ambition for the future. The tantalizing possibility that Audra had developed something groundbreaking at Vibronte kept him awake at night, for he prided himself on his ability to navigate corporate rivalries through sheer competence and integrity, not through backroom machinations. Yet the more he considered the evidence, a leaked memo hinting at Project Aurelia, cryptic references to a revolutionary textile blend that could redefine haute couture, the more he feared that Audra might be engaging in underhanded tactics. His concern reached such heights that he resolved to confront Audra directly, to pierce through her carefully constructed persona and learn whether she truly concealed an ulterior motive or if the rumors were merely the product of hyperactive gossip among board members. Under the guise of professional courtesy, he arranged a meeting with Audra at Vibronte's penthouse showroom, hoping that face-to-face conversation would reveal the truth. He rehearsed his questions in his mind, each formulated to test her sincerity. Is Project Aurelia your own innovation, or will there be hidden strings attached? Are you prepared to share the fruits of your research transparently, or will you utilize it to manipulate negotiations? He envisioned himself calmly demanding clarity, confident that logic and honesty would prevail. What he did not anticipate was how his approach would risk fracturing his relationship with Claire, his fiancée and business partner, for Claire had always warned him against headlong dives into confrontations that might backfire. Claire's instincts proved prescient when she learned of Kyle's plan to question Audra alone. To her, the idea sounded reckless. Confronting a rival with unverified suspicions could trigger a bitter public dispute, one that Audra, ever skilled at shifting blame and leveraging leaks, would win hands down. Claire feared that if Audra responded with indignation and leaked selective portions of their exchange to the press, Kyle's credibility would suffer irreparable harm. In her eyes, the appropriate course was to gather irrefutable evidence before making any direct accusations, to ensure that any challenge to Audra would be grounded in solid proof and thus minimize collateral damage to their joint ventures. When she voiced her objections, imploring Kyle to postpone the meeting until they could assemble a dossier, emails, financial records, witness testimonies, he bristled at what he perceived as her lack of faith in his judgment. He accused her of overcaution, of undermining his ability to lead, of treating him like a child rather than an equal. Their arguments grew heated, echoing the same impassioned clashes that had characterized their early days together, but this time with higher stakes, their professional reputations and the trust they had painstakingly built. By the time May 19th arrived, they stood at an impasse as Claire determined to proceed strategically, Kyle resolved to act swiftly. And the tension between them pulsed like a live wire, threatening to snap at the slightest provocation. Meanwhile, Diane watched these developments with mounting alarm. From her vantage point, every decision Kyle made in isolation widened the gulf between him and Claire and risked playing directly into Victor's hands. She feared that should Claire's worst predictions come true, a public scandal, a wave of negative press, Kyle would find himself not only embattled in his relationship but also vulnerable to Victor's overtures of support, which might entail concessions so costly that he would lose control of his own projects. Diane's maternal instincts had carried her through countless boardroom battles, but this was different. Her son's heart was on the line, and she knew that once personal relationships fractured, they rarely healed without deep scars. She resolved that if Kyle persisted in his unilateral approach, she would be compelled to step in, to leverage her own network of allies, attorneys, PR experts, former Newman insiders, to orchestrate a parallel strategy that would both protect Kyle and preserve his alliance with Claire. She envisioned drafting a memorandum to their shareholders, a carefully worded statement calling for calm and transparency, subtly shifting blame away from Kyle and highlighting systemic vulnerabilities at Vibrante that necessitated a thorough internal review. She even considered arranging a private sit-down between Victor and herself, appealing to his respect for her family to persuade him to halt Audra's campaign. Yet each potential move carried its own risks, and Diane found herself beset by a paralyzing fear. The very intervention she enacted to save Kyle might prove the catalyst that confirmed his greatest insecurities, that he could not succeed without his mother's protection. As the week of May 19th dawns, the stage is set for an inevitable clash of wills. Kyle, determined to uncover Audra's true intentions, will confront her head-on, armed only with his instincts and the raw urgency of a son seeking to protect his mother's legacy. Claire, equally determined to safeguard their future together, will marshal her meticulous plans behind the scenes, her own frustration simmering as she weighs each possible outcome. Diane, tethered by love and fear, will watch from the wings, her mind racing through every contingency as the alarm bell in her head grows ever louder. Whether Kyle's bold initiative will fracture his relationship with Claire beyond repair, or whether Diane's looming intervention will tilt the balance back in their favor, remains to be seen. But one truth stands immutable. In the cutthroat world of Genoa City's business elite, where alliances shift like desert sands and reputations can be forged or crushed by a single ill-timed revelation, the choices made this week will echo far beyond the immediate fray, resonating through boardrooms and living rooms alike, determining not only the future of Vibrante and Newman Enterprises, but the bonds of love and loyalty that underpin every family dynasty.